All right, welcome back, listener. Today with me on a podcast, myself, Stephen Maxted, the host, and we have Matthew Gale, founder of PolySense Solutions. Now, Matt's going to do justice better than I will here about describing what his company does, but I've heard him pitch a few times, so I'm going to give it my best shot here. But yeah, he is in, I guess, like the tech space of monitoring how much electricity is used from different pieces of equipment. I think more the direction of the company overall so far, but he works in multiple industries, is focused on healthcare, and he's doing some great work there to determine use cases of products. Maybe they need more equipment or better use and management of equipment within this process here. And without further ado, Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it, man. It's good to be on here in the early beginnings.
Yeah, we're just kicking it off here. So
absolutely. Yeah, you did a great job of the intro there. I'm still honing in on my elevator pitch, trying to make it concise and make sense. You hit the nail on the head. Or essentially, we're doing asset utilization and energy monitoring. So I think a lot of times it just sounds like a lot of words mashed together. But basically, what we're doing is, I think one of the easiest products. We have a few different sensors that we have, and one of the easiest ones to explain is our smart plug, because I think people have seen that in their home, like a smart plug for turning off your lamp and turning on your lamp from your phone and stuff like that, right?
Right.
So we have one of those. We call it the PolySense Bolt, and the big difference between the consumer version that you'd see in your house for turning your lamp on and off and ours is actually we use this technology called LoRaWAN. So it's just short for long range radio, wider network. So basically what it is, instead of using Wi-Fi or Bluetooth like your house would for these plugs, we use this LoRaWAN protocol. So what it's really great at is super long distances, and it's really secure too. So if you imagine a facility, like a big manufacturing facility or healthcare setting or something like that, where you have a lot of walls in the way, you have weak Wi-Fi. Some customers don't even want to have Wi-Fi, like some unknown Wi-Fi sensor in their building. So the good thing about ours is we have this, we have the LoRaWAN plug. We can put it as far away from the internet router as you can imagine. We can be up to 500 meters away, and it'll still reach to our hub. So super long range, and it's secure. And then also, you can shut your whatever you have plugged into it remotely on and off, just like you could for the home stuff. But what we're tracking is electrical data, as well as we're tracking utilization data. So what our customers want to know is, they usually have expensive machines. So they want to know how often is that machine on, and how often is it sitting there doing nothing? So what time of day is it used? Is it used a lot Tuesday mornings? Is it used, is it sitting in some weird idle state overnight using a bunch of power and it doesn't need to? That's the kind of stuff that we do. So yeah. Yes. And then we have a whole bunch of other sensors that we can get into, but a lot of them do the same thing. Just basically, we just watch over customers' equipment, and we give them the data to be able to make better informed, data-driven decisions.
Awesome. I'm just going to demo here. I was just looking around my desk to find something that would be comparable to what physically that looks like, and not to put you on the spot here, but I have it like a dongle here, basically like a cord. And so if I could use this as an example here, basically you're plugging this machine into your pieces of equipment, and then this is plugged into the wall. This is kind of the medium between there, and in the middle of that, you'll probably have multiple pieces of equipment within a working environment, and you'll have these pieces between there. That's sending information back to your software, and then you're giving an analysis of everything too, just to do a visual for people if they do end up watching this to get an idea, because I know that I sometimes will call it simple-minded. I need to have the visual. I mean, you got one right there. I should have just asked if you have one. There you go. Oh, there you go.
So that's the bolt. So basically, that plugs into the wall.
Amazing.
And then you'd plug your device into this, and then it talks to our hub. So this is our hub. So this can be, this goes in your server room or wherever. So this can be,
amazing.
This goes close to the internet. So one's for Wi-Fi and one's for our sensors.
Awesome.
And then, this can be, like I said, several hundred meters away through steel walls, you name it. It'll reach And and then you can look at a nice, a bunch of graphs, and we have a web application, so users can log in and they can see, how, is that machine currently on right this second? Is it off right this second? Is it, how much power is it used in the last month, last week, that kind of stuff. So
yeah, and that's kind of like, when I know we've had some more chats about your product over the last like kind of year since we met here, and then got in kind of more involved and just going to events and always catching up on stuff. But I know one of the bigger use cases here, and we've talked about this a bit, was people's impression of things being busy doesn't always mean that the products are being utilized. Like the pieces of equipment, let's call it an X-ray machine, it'll be busy for this chunk of time. The impression from everyone working around that machine is that it's just, you need more of them, but the case may be just spreading out those appointments, and it turns out that product is not being utilized actually as much as you would think. So it kind of helps analyze that in a real numbers way for folks.
That's what we heard, is that a typical manager who's in charge of the budget for the year for purchasing assets and things like that will be told from their staff, hey, we need another machine X, need another machine Y. It's busy all the time. I can never get on it. And typically, kind of what we're seeing is that it's usually not busy all the time. It's just usually, if you can look at a heat map of the week, you can see, okay, it's busy Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays mornings, but the afternoons are free and Friday's wide open. So we don't actually need another one. We just need a different schedule.
Right.
So yeah, and I mean, we have this is for like benchtop lab equipment. We have some of these in manufacturing settings where people have like different power tools and stuff plugged into them they want to know utilization of. But but for the bigger equipment, we call this is our PolySense amp, we call it, and it's a non-invasive sensor. So what I mean by that is it does the same thing as the bolt that I just described, but it's simpler for there's more calculations that our server does, but essentially this just opens and closes. And so if you have, like you mentioned, an X-ray machine or another big piece of equipment that doesn't plug into the wall, it's usually like hardwired. It's usually hardwired into the to the panel. So we would just clip this around one of the wires, like one of the, depending on the type of equipment and how many phases it's running and things like that. Clip this around one of the wire, this just clips like this. It doesn't interfere with the equipment at all. And we teach it once, this is on, this is off. You just, it can sense how much current is flowing through that conductor once it's connected.
Very cool.
And then you can get text messages when the machine turns on or turns off. And you can also get same thing. You can see when it's used, what time of day it's used, all that kind of stuff. So for the, because that was one of the problems with especially healthcare equipment, is that people don't want to put something in line, that they don't isn't been tested with it. So that's when especially when we use these, because it has zero effect on the operation of the equipment. The downfall is you can't control it. You can't turn it on and off remotely, but use case.
Cool. Right on. I'm glad you had better demos than I did, but I think that's a great visual for people to see and understand, a little bit more, because I know we talked about it a lot, and I get it because of multiple times chatting about it, but to really dumb it down basically for folks, I think that's awesome. And so what would be like projects that you worked on? Walk me through some of the stuff you mentioned, like industrial stuff. I know we've chatted about that and the healthcare thing. What kind of equipment specifically do people have you done like analysis for, and what was the outcome of that summary or analysis of what was going on there?
Well, it's still pretty early days. We've had the bolt and the amp working for only probably about 6 months now, actually, not even quite 6 months in operation. But we've had other sensors before that, like as far as utilization goes. But right now we're using it on a bunch of different manufacturing equipment. And we also we are on a few other in like a lab setting on some basically some medical device testing equipment. So usually what people want, what we've noticed, our customers, they want to monitor high value equipment, right? So you're not going to yet. I mean, typically we haven't seen the need to spend money monitoring something that is an inexpensive asset, or it doesn't cost you a lot of money when it's doing nothing. It's usually assets that cost you a lot of money when they're doing nothing, or you want them working and you want to know,
right.
Do you need another one, or can you sell this, or they're unattended, so like there's not a human around, and you want to know it's running over the weekend, and you want to know, is that actually, you don't want to be sitting there all weekend wondering, is that machine still running, or I wonder if there's any problems, and that's where the PolySense kind of got going, was exactly that. It was I worked in the lab space and manufacturing environments where there's all this super expensive equipment, $1 million machines, but they can't tell you what they're up to when no one's around. Some of the newer equipment it has IoT capabilities, but it's super segmented, right? So it's, manufacturer A, like GE or whoever, they might have like their own app that you can connect to and figure out what's doing or not around. But then, usually you're going to own multiple OEMs, right? You're going to own machines from different companies. So you're not going to have 5 different apps on your phones, and probably some of them won't even have IoT capabilities. And plus, a lot of people don't even want to connect certain machines to the internet because there's sensitive things happening on those internet. So that's the benefit of ours, is that it's technology agnostic. So we don't, if it uses electricity or it vibrates or it has lights, we can monitor it. And if it it doesn't really matter if, like, basically it doesn't matter the type. So we can you can see everything all on one dashboard.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So, but we've already, like, even in the amount of time that we've been running it, we found that we're already seeing that equipment is being left on, overnight when it doesn't really need to be. Like, it's using electricity when it probably doesn't need to be. It's just left in some like standby mode. We also found that there was a faulty piece of equipment that was drawing. It was off, but it was still actually drawing a little bit of electricity, like 15 watts, like not much, but like it should be drawing 0, and it was drawing a little bit of power. And so just finding, this is early days, and imagine, hopefully we're already starting to dig into basically algorithms in our back end, so that the customer can, when they go log into their dashboard, they can just see insights like, hey, we've noticed that this machine is not actually producing anything useful. Like, it's not actually doing work, but it's using a lot of power, at 2 a.m. That's not like the rest of your machines. Like, is that okay? And maybe that's totally fine, and they can just acknowledge it. But hopefully it'll flag people and say, like, well, wait a minute, that machine should be off. Why is it using, and we can actually show them what it's costing them, because we put in all their Manitoba Hydro and wherever they are in North America, we can put in their electricity rates, and they can see what it's costing them to keep that machine plugged in or turned on and things like that. So
super interesting, especially from I'm spending a little bit of time right now on the back end of my world outside of the podcast, doing some work with a light company. And I know that they have some incredible efficiencies on how they've done like LED stuff, but you could really validate that with your equipment. If you had like, A piece of equipment versus B piece, whatever it is, like, is it worth updating too, right? I know I've seen that lots in manufacturing facilities where you mentioned, right, like different brands or just even different years, right, that you go back, they're not as efficient, just like vehicles used to not be. I'm sure that they're burning more. And what do you see for like savings on some of this stuff, Matt? And not to put you on too much on the spot for like numbers, but like these are potentially like big cases, or even just theoretically, what would a situation look like where you're saving someone money just from a suggestion?
Yeah, like that's one of the things we're working on right now, is coming up with an average size, like a medium size manufacturing business or a small lab can expect to save this much money in optimizations. So awesome. We're going to be putting out a white paper actually to go over that, like what the expected savings are. I don't really have any numbers to go on.
That's right. Okay. Yeah. No, don't force it.
Yeah. But I mean, like the stuff that we do have, like a lot of it is just it's even hard to even put a number on it. But like, for example, what I was mentioning about the 3D printer customers and stuff that we have, like they have these expensive 3D printers that we monitor those specifically for. They just want to know, is the machine on or is it off? Like, pretty simple. Right. we have like a webcam solution as well you can get, so you can actually, if it's a process that you want to monitor through our web app, so you can log in and you can like click on the camera and you can watch, maybe it's 3D printing, maybe it's something else, and you can just set eyes on it to know something's going sideways. But this specific customer, they want to know that immediately when this machine shuts off, and it's usually on the weekends and things like that, because they got to get in and deal with it.
Yep.
Because they end up with late parts and damage to their reputation, because now they're 3 or 4 days late because they came in Monday and the machine was sitting there since Friday at midnight.
Right.
Because they didn't know about it, but now they know about it as soon as they get a text message Friday at midnight. So Saturday morning, they know they got to go in and deal with that and get it up and going. And so, there's definitely some, and that cost changes depending on the customer. But
totally,
yeah, we're looking at get some white paper with some actual values, especially now that we're monitoring a lot more. What's the word? Like, there's more granularity. Like before, we were just like, it's on, it's off. There was nothing really else there. But now that we're actually tracking, very, very down to the second, how much electricity it's using and when it's on and when it's off, then we can actually, see what we can optimize and see what we can save clients.
Yeah. Well, I think that like what you just said there too, and I'm listening and hearing it, like, what, you're right. Okay, cool. You could, you're going to save some on electricity based on what you're looking at here and the ability to use, those plugs in different ways, either to turn the equipment off or just to know when it's on and off. But one of the other things ultimately is just to know like the efficiency of time. Like we were mentioning in the healthcare setting there too. Like It's not all about the use of it. It's like, hey, are you maximizing that product? How could you be better at it? Maybe they have to change up we'll call it, like you said, like the time sheet, the shifts on the schedule, because you're not using it in an effective way. And I think that's way bigger, because you could be burning electricity doesn't either way on certain machines. I don't know this for a fact, but it's like, if you're not maximizing like your ROI on that from that business standpoint, whether it be in public healthcare or within privatized section of manufacturing, they're both on a budget, and you're providing invaluable data.
For sure. Lagged out a bit there. You're still frozen.
Yep. I saw that too. I don't know why.
We're good.
17-minute mark. Yeah, we're back. So what, Matt? That's all. And like you've obviously, what I'm hearing here on this conversation is, your original product has changed a lot. Do you want to walk us through, like, how did you get started? Like, what did it look like, and what does it look like now, for people to understand? Like, this takes time to develop, and your first, stage of whatever product is really more like proof of concept, I would say, in many ways. And then it's like, hey, now we're developing and making more advanced products, because I think a couple words used here are different than I've heard before. Or maybe it's just me hearing them again directly. But yeah, how did it start off, and how did it, where are you today? Like, let's describe that.
Yeah, I guess like, it has changed quite a bit. And like, I guess you could say I pivoted, or a product broadened, or, I think I did probably both of those things. But ultimately it just comes down to, I'm doing my best to, I guess, like, obviously it sounds obvious, but listen to the customers and what they actually want, because I've done it a few times where I've gone off and I've built something, and then, I'm like, look what I built. And everyone's like, oh, that's pretty cool, but what we want is like this, and so, get, like, it's been said ad nauseum, but like, getting the MVP out the door and getting feedback as early as possible, even if you're embarrassed of it. And that was my biggest problem. Is, I'll get back to your original question, but that was my problem.
No, it's okay.
Is perfectionism and not wanting to release something into the wild until it's like, I'm very happy with it. And then, but I've just learned you can't do it. You got to just put shit out there, and even if it's half working, and just get feedback on it, But anyway, so to answer your question, so where I started was, like I mentioned earlier, I was working for some, manufacturing and testing companies in the from, I guess, 2011, I guess, till 2017. And in that time, the companies that I work for all had the same problems, and that were just visibility of what's happening with all your equipment, not just your equipment, like your whole company in general. But a big thing was your physical assets and understanding like what's working on what. Like, so we have all these projects happening, but you need all these machines to do these projects. So tracking where, which people and which machines are working on what. And that was one problem. But what really got me started was just being in the dark when you're not around. So what I mean by that is we ran a lot of equipment that runs lights out, they call it. So basically it's running, in the weekends with the lights out in the building, right? It's doing work while there's no humans around. The problem is a lot of these machines, they break down, they have problems, and it costs money to just let them sit there and do nothing for 2 or 3 days, right? While you're, you leave Friday at 4:00, everything looks good. You come back Monday, and now things have been sitting there. All in some instances, some things have been sitting there, and the problem is much worse now after 3 days than it would have been if you would have got there, say, the next morning.
Right.
Potentially, you could have saved, depending on the instance, like thousands of dollars. Not to mention the project's late now. Blah blah blah. So I ended up sort of solving those problems with some really basic, like I don't know if you're familiar with Arduino, but it's like a microcontroller. It's just a really simple sort of way to throw something together quickly to get, for example, you can hook up like a light sensor to it and a Wi-Fi shield to it. And, in an afternoon, you can basically be getting emails if the light is on or off kind of thing, right? It's pretty simple, but it's, you're kind of hacking it together with hot glue and stuff like that. So, it was good for a prototype.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And it sort of did the job. I'm like, well, okay, this is pretty cool. This is working. And then, but it was pretty prototypey. And then I ended up leaving to another company, and I ended up getting a call saying, hey, you worked on that. There's a sensor that you made that would work for this machine. Do you think you can make another one that could add a couple more features? And I said, sure. So I built it, and then it'd be cool if it had a few more features and a few more features, and then it sort of evolved into this product, right? And it was for monitoring metal 3D printers, and it was
cool.
a very expensive process. Breaks down all the time. It's a pretty relatively new technology in the grand scheme of things compared to traditional manufacturing. So it's still working on a lot of the kinks. And long story short, it breaks down a lot and it's expensive. So I came up with this sensor to monitor these 3D printers, and then I made my first sale in 2020, I guess it would have been. Yeah.
Awesome.
I made my first sale in 2020, and I thought, oh, wow, okay, so I'm onto something here. Somebody else bought this, and my first actual sale outside of that one I built for the other customer. And I already had like software, it had a bit of software. It was pretty janky, and they got notifications. That was the big thing. And it had a camera on it that they could see what was going on. And they really liked it. And I thought, okay, like, and they were saying like, oh, you should be calling everybody with these machines. And they were saying all the, and I was like, okay, I'm onto something here. And I was still working full time. I got a mortgage and a family and stuff. And so, making that jump to, full time is entrepreneurship is difficult. And luckily I had a colleague or an ex colleague, I guess, a guy I know who owns a local company here in Winnipeg, and he heard about what I was up to, and he's been a really good mentor to me throughout this process. And he basically said like, "What you got to jump into this, and what would it take for you to jump into this?" And so he invested. He was the first angel investor into PolySense, and he
awesome.
de-risked. I'll say me jumping into this full time, and I had a cushy government job. I was engineering manager with the WHA, and so it was hard to leave that position. That was basically my dream job, and but now I couldn't be happier. I like, well, depending on when you ask me, but I mean, I love it. But
overall, though,
it's like this is the right call for sure. And so I jumped in, but then I had a really hard time selling to the other 30. Like I thought it was funny because like I made this marketing sheet, I got these Yeti mugs, and I engraved PolySense Solutions on them, and I sent them out to all these different companies that I've been kind of watching on LinkedIn that had the same machines, And yeah, I put them all out there, and I was like, oh man, just gotta wait for my phone to ring now, and then nobody called.
I'm
Oh,
sorry to laugh. I've never
okay.
heard this of you
Interesting.
before,
All
but
right. So,
yeah.
I thought that I had this, but it's, yeah, sales is a lot harder. I was very naive and still am, I guess, but, I thought it would be a lot easier to sell it than it was. And I thought, okay, well, what else looks like a 3D printer? And, there's got to be so people care if this machine is running or not, and they need notifications. There's got to be other machines like this, right?
Totally.
And I thought of this other company here in Winnipeg, who I used to work for, and they run these expensive testing machines. So they're not 3D printers, but they basically test medical devices. And so I reached out to them and said, hey, I think I can make something that would be a new product that's like the 3D printer monitor, but it'd be for monitoring. It'd be like more of a versatile sensor for monitoring what you're like what you guys are doing. And they said that'd be great. And so they were my customer number 2. And yeah, and they signed on, and they were, they essentially saved PolySense because, they were a sizable contract, and they were really, just the relationship I had with them. They worked closely with me on sort of debugging a lot of the stuff, and being patient with software updates and things like that. And so I don't know, okay, so who else looks like them, right? So I can sell this. Basically what it was like, imagine multi-purpose sensor, so like something that can detect vibration, light, liquid, gas, temperature, you name it, and you can just you can just tell it, okay, when this happens, these people want a text message, or that kind of stuff, right? And so I went to this conference in Boston. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it was like lab facility management and monitoring in pharma. I think it was what it was called. But it was like very specific to the pharmaceutical research industry, and basically like using technology to solve problems in labs and things. I thought, okay, well, these guys like lab asset management and monitoring. That's what we're doing. So I went out there and I brought the multi-purpose sensor, and I said, here it is. And it was, I got didn't get any sales from it, but the biggest thing I got out of that conference was the feedback I got from all these. They all said the same thing. Every single person I spoke to at that conference did the same thing. And it was like, this is cool, but we don't really have a whole lot of machines that run unattended. Like everything that we do, we have all this expensive high value equipment, and sometimes it's in multiple sites. Like we might have a lab in Boston and a lab in like North Carolina, and like the same company, but just different labs. But I'm in charge. I have the budget for, I have to, I'm the asset manager for both sites. And, this person was saying like, I'm the person who gets the request. Like I need another machine. It's always busy. And she's like, but is it always busy? But she just has no data to make any decisions, right? She has to just take their word for it and say, okay, I guess we need another one. But meanwhile, maybe the one in Boston is actually used a lot, but the one in North Carolina is just holding the desk down, and it gets used once a month, right? Maybe they just need to ship the one from North Carolina to Boston, but they don't have any data to make those decisions. And I thought, well, it's like, what could what's like a universal way of knowing that? I thought it was like, well, electricity. So I called a few of those people I spoke to after the conference was over, and I said, like, if I had a smart plug that could tell you these things, is that something that you would buy? And they're like, yeah, that sounds like what we need. And I was like, okay, well, all right. So then I went back to the drawing board, and that was a year or so ago, and now we have the bolt and the amp and all this kind of stuff, and we're just working out the kinks right now before we really roll it out. Awesome. So yeah, so it's meandered quite a bit, from where we started monitoring just 3D printers to basically monitoring everything. And now our software, the goal is to be able to complete facility management with our software. So being able to log in and see, everything to do with your people, everything to do with your assets, your projects, your inventory, kind of a, one-stop shop for everything is the facility management and maintenance wise. So
yeah, that is so cool. I mean, that totally makes sense to me. The way that you've described it, it's like, that seems like almost like well, now that you've said it and explained how that came to be, it seems like very obvious that would have happened. But I'm sure at different times, and like you kind of alluded to there too, is when I go through the same thing with the roller coasters, is like, you love what you're doing, but some days are are tricky because you're leading the ship, you're responsible for lots of stuff,
Yeah.
and then you're the conduit between the company and your company too, all in one. So I think that's one of the added stresses too of running the startup is initially you're every role or pretty close to, right? So
Yeah, it's definitely challenging finding wearing all the hats can get exhausting.
yeah,
That's for sure.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I think that's a great run through. What you mentioned you have like a one angel person, invested with you, got you
Mhm.
going there. I've seen you pitch at other events. What's up and coming for you as far as are there any like pitches or any events that you're touring this summer? This being recorded here, April 2023. What does forward look for you like?
Yeah, so we're registered for the TNT Spring Investment Summit. So here in
Awesome.
Winnipeg, so we're hoping to raise some cash there. So we're in a pre-seed right now, trying to raise a few $100,000 is what we're trying to raise. So I think 400,000 is what is the target. So hopefully with
Awesome.
some TNT cash, and then we're also talking with some local investors as well, that are where we're hoping that that deal is going to happen as well, to combine into the 400K that we're looking for to hit our goals. So that's what, if we can get that, then we can definitely hit our hiring targets that we want this year, and
Yep.
customer acquisition targets. So yeah,
Awesome.
it's a lot of work.
On that note too, Matt, I don't know how much you can indulge in this, but just to like lightly touch on that. So it's like, okay, great. You're talking about raising money. A lot of people hear this lots, especially in like startup tech and some of the spaces that we've been in the same environments for. But
Yeah.
for some folks, maybe not directly in the line there, like, so you mentioned like hires and maybe some, like, I don't know if those are hires for sales or if that's like back end stuff. Describe like, what would you utilize that resource for? As an investment right away? Like, where does that kind of go? Whatever you can share.
Yeah,
There.
for
What does
sure.
that look like for folks?
Yeah, so we'd be looking for definitely some more technical staff. So right now we have a junior front end developer and a full stack developer, and then we have a front end intern starting right away as well. So we'd be looking for some more back end and front end developers, as well as probably embedded systems computer engineer. So we do all of our own hardware design here. So this is one of our boards here. Printed circuit board.
Does that have your logo on it?
Yeah. So like this is all
That's so
designed.
sick.
Yeah. So we work with Valley Prototyping Solutions. They're here in Winnipeg, and they've been working with us on this and been instrumental in this design. But obviously, eventually we'll have that completely in house, the design and then there's code that runs on that as well.
Cool.
So we need some more assistance there, and then definitely sales and marketing. So I think right now, like my plan is I go back and forth on this, but I think that the play probably is go with an agency for the first little bit while we try to find like a business development manager or somebody who can work the phones and really get leads in the door and that kind of stuff. But I think it's going to take some time to, like, that person's not going to be, I'm going to find that person immediately, I would imagine. But so I'm thinking, if I had the investment dollars right now, I would approach an agency with a few in mind, and go with that route first,
For sure.
just to sort of get out there. And I mean, there's still, like, as there's so much to do there, and I only have so much bandwidth to be like posting on LinkedIn and emailing and calling and doing all that. It's just I can hire 10 people to help me in that department, I feel like. So
for sure. No,
yeah,
I like that play a lot. Your comments around there were like agency. Like I have hired virtual assistants before too. They've been amazing. Like
Yeah.
they've never been like local, and that's I've been through a couple different companies, but one was Virtual Gurus. They're out of Calgary originally. I was with them like at a very early stage, and that was unique, like kind of like skill set. So have hired through there. And that was great because if you needed someone like, let's say you need them for 3 months, or you want to see what that 90 days. That's what I kind of consider like a minimum for working with anyone, both for
Yeah.
hiring and for doing any work for anyone on like a consulting side, unless it is truly like a 1 month project. But you're not really having an impact, I don't think, if you're doing less than that. But if with those folks there, it's like they help build out like calendars to help support other marketing stuff that I was looking on. It's trying to like get rid of that some stuff that you just can't manage, but they're really good at, and then you're not committing to in the nicest of ways, but it's kind of tough to hire, right? Like full time right out of the gates, because you got more weight on the shoulder you're carrying. You're like, okay, how are we supplying this person with work for the next year or more, forever until something like doesn't work out there, hopefully. But these term situations, I think, have a huge advantage for both the company and the person, because they're able to work for you and help you out on a contract, whether it be through a service like that does provide it.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of takes the guessing out of hiring, because hiring is also quite involved too, right? And unless you have someone fall in your lap, you got to kind of go through that, and that takes up more time. So I think that's a great call and a really good example of we're explaining to folks that where that money goes to, it doesn't instantly go to hiring more people, although that is kind of like I think a romantic way that folks look at the startup world. It's like they're going to have all the staff and stuff, but it's kind of come and go a little bit.
Yeah, well, you're right. I mean, that's when you think about just being able to, you feel like you can just like go and find like 5 devs like that and or whatever it is, right? But that's not the case unless you have like, insanely deep pockets. Like you're going to pay them, like just stupid dollars that they're going to like leave whatever position they're in to jump into this, super unknown startup. So it's tricky. And I mean, I've had okay luck with using like I've used quite a bit of like developers on like Upwork and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's another good example, right? Of getting patching the hole, so to say, right?
Yeah, they've been great, but you can tell like they're somewhat. I mean, they're probably juggling multiple projects. That's how they make their living, and they, they're not, committed to PolySense Solutions in any way. They're just like, let's get this done, and done, so I can move on to the next thing, right? So there's a bit of that. I mean, they've been great. They're great, but but then there's no. It's also on the flip side of that, you get your project done, and then you don't have to worry about payroll and benefits and all that kind of stuff for that person. But
totally.
But I mean, we obviously want to find, preferably even local talent within at least Manitoba would be ideal. For our first timers. So and I've been lucky that way. So the three guys working for PolySense now are all from Manitoba, one from Winnipeg, one from Portage, and one from just outside of Carmen. So but luckily it's remote, so but we can all get together for like lunch or like dinner here and there. So I try to like try to bring us at least once a month or something like that. See each other face to face. So so it's easier when they're local. So
definitely. Very good. That's awesome. So you got a pitch coming up. Any other events that you have on the calendar for summer here? I know that there is lots of tech stuff going on. I'm not sure if it's totally a fit for you or if it's just kind of focused on PolySense, right in front of you here. Is there anything else that where people might be able to find you this summer if they are listening ahead of time here and might bump into you?
Yeah, well, I'll be at Uniting the Prairies. I guess that's end of May, I suppose.
Yeah, May 24th, 25th.
You're going to be there too, right?
Yes, that's the plan. Yeah,
sweet. Yeah, it's going to be good. Looking forward to it. It was really good last year. It was a really good time. And then potentially there's quite a few conferences that I really want to attend, mostly in the States this year, but it's pretty highly dependent on how like the next few months look as far as raising capital. And customer acquisition goes. So if we get a couple of good contracts or we raise some cash, then I'll definitely be traveling to some conferences, which will be good because those have been really good at just getting instant feedback from people. Just like, here's our product, here's what we're doing, and I feel like we're a lot better prepared to actually, make some sales now. And or worst case, we get some more feedback from like, oh, this is pretty neat, but like, this is our actual problem, and it's, and that's my problem too, is like trying not to chase every single opportunity that comes up, right? Like it's challenging because like that does happen where we get like requests, like, it just seems like a cool project, but it's, it's maybe one customer has it, and it's just not, it just won't be. We got to find those ones where it's like, okay, if they're having this problem, then so is, a lot of people. Like one example is because our well, both of these can, right? Like the bolt and the amp, they can both detect when something's on and when it's off. So so freezers, we can do temperature monitoring as well. So we actually have a temperature probe that goes into like a fridge or a freezer or an oven. And so if you want to know the temperature inside of a freezer, for example, where you're storing something sensitive, or we're working with a client who has a freezer that has a lot of expensive materials in it. And basically our stuff can tell you when that freezer loses power. So for example, if maybe the example that they gave me was that the cleaning staff one time actually disconnected the freezer or I guess they disconnected it to clean it, or they didn't know, but either way they left it unplugged, and then the temperature dipped and dipped and dipped until that wrecked thousands of dollars worth of inventory in his freezer. But if they would have had one of our PolySense projects, then they would have been notified, a few minutes after they realized the freezer compressor wasn't running anymore. They would have a notification. So, we're thinking about trying to break into the like grocery and like that market, because I've heard, and if anyone's listening to this can verify this, but I've heard that at Costco, there's somebody that walks around with a clipboard and checks the freezers manually like every hour or something like that, because in each freezer there's like hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of
Costco's got everything. They got those like full lambs. I really want to cook one. I don't know how I would do that. I don't know if you've seen them there, but like they're like a full lamb. It looks so cool. But you're probably right. I don't know. Hopefully, maybe if someone is listening and has any ins at Costco, please find us.
Yeah,
send one of us a message. We'll
seems like a pretty massive. But even like the smaller,
for sure. Any food in grocery store, right?
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah. So if even if maybe you are monitoring the temperature, perhaps, but if it's overnight and the temperature hits room temperature at 2 a.m, now you have a lot less time to deal with it, as opposed to if you would have known about it when the freezer went offline, like when the compressor died or your power went out. Now you probably have 2-3 hours before the temperature starts going down. You have more time to deal with the problem. Is all. That's what we're trying to. Is that a road we go down?
Yeah. What's interesting about that, and I'm gonna dispute for a second, but I was away for a little bit this winter and enjoying some sun, and but one of the things that happened when I was away, so I was watching my house and stuff, and power went out. They're not thinking the same stuff that you are as the homeowner, but everything's pretty much fine. But they went out to go use the hot tub a couple of days later, and they're like, "Uh-oh." And they called me. I remember being like panicked because I'm like, so I thought something was like really wrong, but I'm like, it still sucks. The hot tub froze or whatever. But in that case, it would have been great to have a sensor. Maybe there's a use case there for like the leisure side of things. Because if I would have known that, I would have been able to control it a little bit better and got a note on my phone, and I wouldn't have lost a hot tub, even from the insurance side of like running those things. Because we live in a cold climate, like it's super common for this to happen. I know that there's things now in the hot tubs. Apparently, there's like a easier piece of pipe that breaks when it freezes now, so it's supposed to like relieve pressure, so then you only have to replace like that one part of the plastic or whatever, however that's actually designed. I don't know that for fact, so please no one fact check me on
Makes
that.
sense. Some of the newer hot tubs probably have like a frost plug or something like that. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, or something in there for like, you know what I mean? Like if it does freeze and it's like, hey, like just this one piece has to be like replaced if it's blown is one part of it, but maybe they do have sensors. I don't know that to be fact, but in my case, it would have been definitely beneficial to know that, breaker flipped because the power went out. You know, and that's how it automatically does that. Anyways, that's a
Right.
But
No, that makes
Matt,
sense.
sorry. What how do people get a hold of you? Let's say someone is listening that's from Costco with a clipboard, and or an investor out there that thinks this is you know, the cat's meow and they're in there and they think the same thing that we do, that this is really great. How do they find you? Where do they get you at?
Yeah, they can just on LinkedIn, just by searching Matthew Gale or by searching PolySense. Or my email is mgale, so MGALE at polysensesolutions.com. So any one of those methods works.
That's okay.
Yeah. So any one of those methods works. Yeah.
Fantastic. No, I think that's great. So we got LinkedIn, Matthew Gale, mgale at polysense.ca or .com.
mgale at polysensesolutions.com. polysensesolutions.com. Yeah. In hindsight, I wish I would have shortened the email at least.
No, that's perfect.
Always like, when I'm giving somebody my email, PolySense is like a sentence I'm giving them.
No, I think that's great. If anyone does need to get a hold of Matt, that's how you do it here. And I just want to say, Matt, I think we're wrapping up. Thank you very much for joining us today on a podcast. And, you know, hopefully this helps get the good word out about you and everything you're doing at PolySense Solutions. And, you know, it's interesting to catch you now. I feel like we're going to talk in, I don't know how far out, maybe it's later this year or a year or two from now. And I feel like your trajectory will have adjusted, pivoted a little bit, and be still hammered down, doing some really cool things, and hopefully building out a bigger team to help support your goals. So I'm excited to see where you go. And thanks so much for being on with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it. And yeah, it's always good chatting with you.
Yeah, likewise. Awesome. Thank you for listening. Take care.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.